Hello, everyone. We will start in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for Henk to join us. So please be patient and give us a couple more minutes. Thanks. Okay, I think it's time that we can start. I see that people are joining. Yes. Hello, Henk, I see you. Welcome. I'm going to begin the presentation now. I will unmute you in a sec. Let me just take care of the settings. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. For those that are not familiar, this presentation and this special guest webinar is part of the Shiraka Water Management in Iraq 2020 training program. Before I get through the agenda, I just wanted to mention that we do have live Arabic interpretation for the entire presentation. If you would like to listen to everything in Arabic, then please click on the globe icon at the bottom right and choose the Spanish channel. And then you'll be able to listen to everything with a live translation. Before I introduce our expert, I just want to welcome everyone here. And I will just say a couple of opening remarks and introduce our guest speaker, and then he will take over. So just for some background information, the Shiraka Water Management in Iraq 2020 training program is part of a larger Dutch and Netherlands partnership between, the Netherlands and the MENA region. The goal of this training program is for civil servants to that are working in the field of water management to share their knowledge and skills with each other across countries and to enable them to lead and inspire the modernization of water management back home. This program is supported by the Netherlands Enterprise Agency as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have many guests from different organizations, including previous Shiraka programs. And therefore, I'd like to go over some house rules for this presentation very briefly. Firstly, please turn off your microphone, which I have done for you already. And if you're experiencing connection problems, please turn off your video. This will help improve the speed of the connection. At the same time, please, if you have any questions while Mr. Ovink is speaking, please write them in the chat so we can keep track of whose turn it is to ask questions at the end. There will be a Q&A session of about 30 minutes at the end of his presentation. We will be live tweeting this presentation on Twitter, so please, if you would like to be a part of the conversation or to share this discussion with others, please follow us on Twitter at The Hague Academy. And for those who can't make it, a recording will be made available afterwards. So with that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mr. Henk Ovink. You should all by now have read his bio, but I will briefly just mention that he's a special envoy for international water affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and he's also Sherpa to the UN and the World Bank High-Level Panel on Water. So it's with great honor and appreciation that I invite Henk to take over. And if you would like to share your screen, Henk, I think that should be possible.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much. Do you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Maybe a bit, bit low, if you could speak up.
Okay. Yeah. Is this better?
Much better, thanks.
Okay. There are over 50 participants, so going around the room will be a little hard, but I wish we could, because we have quite a bit of time and it would be very good to understand a bit who's in the room, but I'm not sure how that would work.
I can give a brief description of everyone who is here.
It would be very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Would be. So I see. If I change the view, I actually see quite a bit of your faces. So, so that is already amazing. Yeah.
It's a very diverse group, indeed. Mostly the majority of participants here today are part of the Shiraka Water Management in Iraq training. They're mostly civil servants working either in the Ministry of Water Resources in Iraq or at different levels of government. We also have some of the participants who come from academia and the private sector. In addition to, let's say, these core participants of this training program, we've invited current and former participants from other Shiraka water management programs. One that is tailored specifically for Iran, and another that is more general for participants from all across the MENA region. And these participants from all the programs are also mostly civil servants working either at a national or local level, as well as some representatives of academia and the private sector. And finally, we have some partners and guests from RVO, as well as some of the Dutch embassies in Iraq and Iran, and some colleagues from the Hague Academy. So it's a quite diverse group, yeah.
It's amazing, yeah. Well, it's a real honor. Thank you so much for inviting me. So I'm Henk Ovink. I represent the Dutch government on the issues of water. Too much, too little, polluted, often in the mix. And as a special envoy, which is a dedicated ambassador. So that means that I represent the Dutch government around the world on the issues of water in the context of climate, development, and so forth. I have a task to raise awareness on water, to help in places around the world where water is a threat, and to provoke novel strategies to build sustainable development and resiliency in the communities, in the places that are so vulnerable around the world. So I normally, when there was no pandemic, I wasn't supposed to be not in the Netherlands. And I was away 3 out of 4 weeks. I was actually supposed to be in Iraq in December last year, but unfortunately that was postponed. And now it is postponed, of course, again. Although I was in a seminar yesterday of the Cairo Water Week together with your minister. So we were both on the same panel, which was nice to again discuss these issues of water. Now, you know from practice quite a bit of water, so that makes me always a little bit hesitant on what I should share. So I will just share some of my insights that I developed in my current time as special envoy, but also in the years before when I was working for the Obama administration in the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, in the rebuilding of the New York region, as well as in the years before when I was Director General for Water and Planning in the Netherlands. And at that time, very much working on water management in the Netherlands. So don't hesitate with Q&A questions. I mean, we're in this now for more than half a year. I'm pretty adjusted to the fact that everything is digital, but the hardest thing is to really look you in the eye and figure out what your questions are or your ideas. So put them in the chat or raise your hand or ask our host to help engage. So we can also try to let this be a conversation. There is one risk with me. I'm very dedicated to my job. So I can talk about water 24/7. So you have to prevent me from doing that. So don't worry if you interrupt. That is okay. You can, that is very much okay. So let me say how I can best share my screen. Yes, I'll do this. Okay, can you see this?
One moment. Yes.
So this is the planet. It's called the blue marble. It was the first snapshot taken from planet Earth. And it shows our planet for the first time in one picture, 1972, Apollo 17. And of course, that is amazing. It shows the vulnerability of our planet and that there is only one, there's no other planet sneaking behind it. But most importantly, they called it the blue marble. The marble because you see the clouds and the structure of the image. But they also called it blue because over 70%, 70% of the world's surface is covered with water. So with this image, you would never think that there is not enough water, right? If this is the world, what is he talking about, this guy? But now I take a big vacuum cleaner and I take all the water from the planet. So the water in the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, the aquifers, the ice, and I put it also in a sphere, in this round bulb. And let's see what happens. Oh, nothing happens. Wait, sorry. There it is. That is what happens. I forgot. This is what happens. All of a sudden, the world that was blue now is gray. But there's no hole. It's not a Swiss cheese all of a sudden. Water is only on the surface of the planet. So if you put all the water in a sphere, it's not even the size of the United States. It is small. And this is water that is brackish, that is salt, that is no good to use. And if you look at the middle sphere, it is the fresh liquid water in our ground, lakes, and swamps. So this is all the water. This is only liquid water. And then the smallest one is the fresh water that we can use. So 0.4% of all the water on the planet is actually is more or less available for human consumption, industry, energy, food, and so forth. So water is scarce. And all of a sudden you understand that a drought in the combination of a scarce resource or pollution in the context of a scarce resource or the abundance of use in the context of a scarce resource is something we should avoid. Water is more precious than anything we have on this planet. Water is life, Ban Ki-moon used to say, and he is so much true. And we know it now in the times of this pandemic, and this is an old image, I could make a new one, where we say, wash your hands. Well, you know that it's not easy. Over 2 billion people in the world lack access to safe drinking water. Over 3 lack access to the right hygiene facilities, and over 4 to sanitation facilities that are safe and sound. And it means that wash your hands as a first line of defense in the context of COVID-19 for many is out of reach. While it is the best first line of defense, and as I will argue, also our best first step of recovery. Now, we can't go back to normal with this crisis, but how will this new world look like? Will we learn? Secretary Guterres said this more than ever should be a time for science and solidarity. And I couldn't agree more. A time for science, fact-based, understanding, systems thinking, and solidarity, empathy, working together, collaboration, inclusion, leaving no one behind. I think these 2 pillars are critical and important, not only now, always, but also now in these challenging times. Now, when a pandemic hits, it hits the most vulnerable hardest. And that's not only true with a pandemic, that is true with every crisis. Most vulnerable communities, environments, societies, people, species, the ecology, biodiversity is always hit hardest with a disaster, with a crisis, being a pandemic, climate change disaster, a war, conflict, and so forth. And not only are they hit hardest, the recovery time is also bigger. So that means they have a harder time to get back on their feet. And I did a little homework, putting on a map, as you can see, climate, gender, water, conflict, urban, slums, GDP gap, health, crisis. And if you stack them all up, COVID hits where these crises all interlink. And that means that it's often not the pandemic that makes a place vulnerable, it's the interdependency, the layered approach, the connectivity between these challenges that makes us so vulnerable. Africa has an average age of a little over 19 years. So it's a young population. Gaza, a little over 17 years. The vulnerability is not in age when it comes to the pandemic. The vulnerability is in the context of no food security, no water security, insecurity overall in the context of conflicts, migration, climate risks, inequalities, and so forth. And then the pandemic is just the last blow that breaks these societies, these communities. And it is on us. We did it. It's not some crazy outer space power. No, it's people. We are making ourselves more vulnerable with every dollar, every euro, every yen we spend every day. So we know COVID-19 and nature are linked. And we just have had the announcement on the biodiversity COP next year, which was supposed to be held this year in October in Kunming, will be next year. Biodiversity, critical importance for sustainability, for resiliency, for the capacity to rebound. The recovery, therefore, also should be by nature. But climate and COVID are also directly linked. Health issues increase because of climate. So mitigating climate from the origin and its impact helps us recover much better. Other way around, if the recovery efforts we all put in place are also focusing on mitigating climate and adapting to a better world, so making us more sustainable and resilient, they actually add value to two sides of that same coin. So we need a type of leadership on sustainability, on climate and climate action. And these were the images that were sent around the world just before the pandemic hit. You don't see any mouth caps still on these images. These are old images. But this is the world that was calling for that type of action. This is also what we need. And not for nothing, we saw typhoons, droughts, wildfires and floods in 18 and in 19 with refugee and casualties and economic and environmental impact because of climate change across the world. So yes, we have a massive problem. Now first, with this doom and gloom start, which tries to explain that there is interlinkages between everything, my first call is, let's better understand what it means. Because if we understand the complexity and are able to face it and unravel it, unpack it, we can find approaches, novel or not novel, innovative, but at least that can help us accelerate our sustainability effort. So understanding comes first. And we have help, the scientific community. So I only list 3 reports that came out of the IPCC. One is the 1.5 report 2 years ago that showed us what the difference is between a 2-degree and a 1.5 degree world. And I hope you know the Paris Agreement we agreed upon 5 years ago said that the world should not be warmer than 2 degrees post-industrial levels. That was agreed. And then it said, but better 1.5. So there was no political agreement on the 1.5, but there was agreement that 1.5 would be better than 2. But hey, what would politicians know in a room in Paris, the difference between 1.5 and 2? Yeah, you laugh, I see you laugh. I laugh too. It's like, so what are you talking about? Do you even know? So we asked the IPCC to explain us what the difference is. Is there a reason to go for a 1.5 report? Is there a reason or a need even to make sure that 1.5 is the goal and not 2? And yes, the IPCC report showed that the difference between 1.5 and 2 is massive. It is the difference between no coral reefs and at least having 20% left. It is the difference between trillions of dollars lost. It is the difference of millions of people's lives lost. It is the difference between losing part of the environment, our economy and our society. It's the difference also where tipping points become the new normal instead of that we prevent that we cross these borders, these tipping points for the world to fall apart. So 1.5 should be the goal. That is what the IPCC tells us. Second report, critical important for every one of us because it gives us so 1.5 tells us what we can lose or win. Climate change and land tells us something different. It is the report that shows that the way we develop our planet, our economies, our cities, our industries, our infrastructure, our agriculture, food production, energy production. So everything man-made we plan is actually increasing climate change. So it contributes to a warming world, more CO2 emissions. That is one. Second, the way we plan, so the way we develop our cities, our infrastructure, our economies, makes us more vulnerable. So on one hand, we increase climate change, making us more vulnerable. And on the other hand, the way we do it actually makes us more vulnerable because we invest in the wrong way, in the wrong places. So this is a, the Americans would call this a double whammy. This is us, this is where we are. And then the last report I want to highlight is the Ocean and Cryosphere and a Changing Climate report. That scared the out of the Dutch, of course. Since a third of our country is below sea level, and with sea level rise, going up faster, and then with tipping points added to that, even faster, we are at risk. So Ocean and Cryosphere tells us. 3 reports that help us on understanding, critical importance. Every year, UN Environment Program comes up with the emission cap report telling us that we are nowhere close to our reach, 1.5, 2, or our policy scenarios. So we really have to change course, up our game. Now, when I started as a special envoy, I also wanted to understand better what the importance of water is to the world. What are the interlinkages between water and health and food and energy and planning and climate? I started a research that we called the Geography of Future Water Challenges. And you can easily look it up online. And if not, I will send you the link in the chat box later. The Geography of Future Water Challenges is a research I initiated with a consortium led by the Dutch Environmental Assessment Agency. And it tells us now in one book, a website, but also a follow-up research I support, what the importance is of water. And it tells that investing in water has a trickle-down effect across all SDGs. So investing in water increases health and reduces health costs, increases resiliency and redundancy, so reduces risks, vulnerability, and the impact of climate change, builds resiliency and helps build better biodiversity or recover better, and so forth. Now, this is one of the images of that report, and it shows the impact of too much water and too little water. And if you look at the top side of the slide, it tells us where floods and droughts occur. And the downside is who is impacted. And you immediately see the difference that while every country in the world has floods, only in a few places these floods have a humanitarian impact. So inequality is showed by floods and droughts. The inequality of the world is showed by the impact of floods and droughts, leading to more migration and to vulnerability in our cities, the places at risk. And it's in our cities where we all live, 50, moving towards 75%. It's also that we build our cities, IPCC already said it, along our coasts, along our rivers, in the places that are vulnerable, either to floods or in the driest areas of the planet. So we tend to live on the edge of the volcano, and no matter what, no matter how often researchers tell us that it's dangerous, we continue to do so. Listing the economic impact, financial economic impact of that, Stefan Hallegatte and team show that there's a list of cities that adds up to the trillions of losses in 2050. Miami leads that list, but the Netherlands is on that list too, either number 3 or 4, depending on how you count, with Amsterdam and Rotterdam as one of the 2 cities that are impacted high. OECD and the World Bank say that global flood damage will cost $1 trillion a year in 2050. $1 trillion, I can't imagine that. So there's an financial economic loss. There's exacerbated inequality because of floods. And it doesn't matter where you are. Mumbai, as this image shows, or in New York, or in any place in the Middle East, Africa, or Latin America, inequality is exacerbated by floods and droughts, by extreme events. I saw it in New York, where the most vulnerable were hit hardest by these floods, and the impact is of those extreme events, and the time of recovery is massive. Now, it's inequality, so there's a it's amazing. There's an economic risk, there's a social risk, there's a health risk when we talk about water, there's biodiversity collapse in the context of water, so it's environmental, it's social, it's economic, it's everything. So if we look at the future, it's challenging, with more urban growth, population growth, storm intensity, temperature rise, sea level rise, and so forth, more droughts, more extreme events, biodiversity loss. So that future looks bleak. And we replicate our investments from the past. Stupid infrastructure that will not bring us salvation, but will make us more vulnerable with every dollar spent. So we have to reinvent ourselves. And that is what we did. 5 years ago, we drafted 17 sustainable development goals, a holistic, comprehensive agenda for a better planet, a better world, better societies, more equality, more opportunities, better growth, more sustainable cities, oceans that are alive and not dying, peace, justice, strong institutions, and so forth. 17 goals that are all interrelated. Don't cherry pick. The interdependency across all actually makes them add value for our society. And we agreed on a Paris Agreement, setting a target of 2 degrees and an ambition of 1.5. But the world showed post 2015 that business as usual is not enough. No, business as usual is actually becoming lethal. Too much casualties in our environment, in our economies, and in our societies. Image from Afghanistan, refugee camp where climate is hitting. Image from Bangladesh, where a typhoon or cyclone, COVID, and vulnerable communities are interlinked. So we have to change course. We have no other option to change course. And we can. It is possible. So instead of staying non-responsive, moving us from crisis to crisis and replicating the mistakes of the past, we more and more become reactive. We see a crisis, a disaster, an extreme event, a conflict, the impact of a pandemic as an opportunity to recover, to build back better, as we say. It is still reactive. It is a little step forward. It responds to the crisis of yesterday. But if we want to deliver on the promise of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to change course. We have to become proactive and not move from crisis to crisis, not be responsive to crisis, but proactively prepare ourselves for the future. That is the pathway that will build resiliency and sustainability. And that starts with people. While you could advocate and say, hey, this starts with projects, no, it starts with people. An enabling environment that is capacitated to deal with this. Yes, we need the projects to make a difference. We need that implementation for impact. But we need an enabling environment, strong institutions that are accountable, communities that are strong and empowered, that have the capacity to work together, to stand strong, to invest in themselves, access to water, so reduced inequalities, rights for everybody, women, children, across the board, in every place and country and community, a strong community empowerment, an enabling environment that is capacitated to make sure that these interventions stick that there is a sustainable recovery, that recovery builds resiliency, and that collaboration is consistent, that capacity building is done with commitment, and that the interventions indeed are cross-cutting. Invest in people first before you invest in projects. And this is a conviction by practice, by my experience and my political reasoning, but it also is an economic case. If you invest in the process, if you invest in this enabling environment, you maximize opportunities. And if you maximize opportunities, the impact of those interventions you actually move forward with have a higher performance. So there's more and they are better. So invest $1 million to spell your billions right is critical important for the enabling environment and in the end to have for projects that make a difference. I said this, there is a business case for stupid infrastructure. There is. If I invest in a road that goes from A to B, financial, economic people will always tell you there is a revenue stream. Yes, there is on the short term, but only single focused. And it means from a financial economic point of view, you will see some gains. But from a sustainability point of view, you will see losses. If that infrastructure investment is not done holistically, comprehensively, inclusively, and sustainably. That means including all needs and all partners, including all interests across environmental, social, cultural, and economic needs, demands, and opportunities, but also looking at the longer term. Finding ways to capture revenues that are not there tomorrow, but the day after or even longer. That makes infrastructure investment inclusive, holistic, and sustainable. The World Economic Forum argues with me that that is needed. They show every year in their risk report that there is an urgency. The likelihood and the impact of our extreme events only go up. One. Second, to the right, there are clear interdependencies between all these risks. And that means that only with holistic approaches, comprehensive approaches that include all partners and that look at the long term, are we able to mitigate the risks, adapt to that future, and build sustainably and resiliently. That demands a type of capacity that is transformative. This is not done by replicating mistakes from the past. And with that, I look at water. Again, coming from the geography of future water challenges, you see the blue circle, where you see how water, so not SDG 6, but how water is related to all SDGs. To life below water and life on land, to poverty, to hunger, to health and well-being, to education and gender equality, of course, to clean water and sanitation, but also energy, industry, inequalities, cities, and so forth. Investing in water has a trickle-down effect across all SDGs, as I said. But for that, we need to understand water better, its complexity, and face it head on. We need to value water across all these needs and interests, across all sustainable development goals. And we have to manage water inclusively, comprehensively, and sustainably at all scales. From your community all the way up to your city, your street, your region, your river basin, across borders and boundaries that are man-made, finding systems approaches to not only mitigate risks, but actually create value, added value for a sustainable future. That means integration, inclusion, and sustainability. And for that, to get there, you have to look at the long term, really long term, and bring that long term back home. So look at 100 years, 30 years, 10 years, 5. Bring that long term home with scenarios, with studies, with planning, with collaboration. A plan on the long term is nothing. You need the projects on the short term, but the projects without the plan are nothing too. One-off events that actually make us more vulnerable. So the plan needs the projects as much as the projects need the plan. And that can only be done inclusively by collaboration and transparent, being accountable and be able to develop the business cases that are sustainable and built on inclusion and collaboration. If you do that, long-term and short-term, inclusion and transparent, and bring it together with planning, design, research, innovation, by understanding, valuing, and managing, then you build up capacity. Capacity that is institutional as well as individual in our communities, in our governments, in our businesses, across societies, across borders and boundaries across the world. That type of enabling environment will aspire and inspire action across the world. Now, I said you need innovation, design, planning. Why? We need to be inspirational. We need to aspire. We need to provoke that ambition with concrete ideas. And this type of approach that is very much oriented at solutions helps us provoke political and societal ambition. So solutions are needed, but they better be innovative, catalytic, and pragmatic. They also need to have the capacity to connect across scales, time, and interest. With that opportunity and connected to an urgency, there is a responsibility to be aspirational and inspirational. So there is this political capacity too, this societal need too. So comprehensive solutions that are innovative and catalytic, that connect us all, but also the interests and needs across scale, time, that have this aspiring and inspiring impact. Now what's next for the Netherlands? We don't know. Huh? These are maps of the Netherlands in 21, 22, and 2300. 2300 is here. Pretty wet place. So we better need that innovative capacity to step up, even scale up, replicate our ideas, or all move to higher ground. We need catalytic actions too. Shall I? Yeah. Climate change, COVID, our lack of investing in the SDGs put us on a course, a pathway that actually makes us more vulnerable. With technical solutions that respond to these crises, we only delay our verdict. We only give us a little bit more time. To escape this, we have to pick ourselves up. Well, I can't do this. You can do this, hopefully. Oscar is laughing. Yeah. We need these type of approaches that actually pick us up, that wake up, that drive the change that is needed. Catalysts, leverages that are innovative, inclusive, collaborative, holistic, that drive change, and that by replication, we can scale up for the impact we need. As I said, we need to invest in the people, and invest in the people means that you have to build trust. Invest in the process. And to invest in the process, you need time and space. In literature, we call this soft space. An area or place, hey Hamza, a place where there is considerable, where there's time to invest in each other, where there's an opportunity to build trust. A safe place, as I organized post-disasters around the world, there are people of all backgrounds, people of all interests. Here in New York, Republicans and Democrats, bankers and vulnerable communities, government and non-government, that totally distrusted each other, could come together, invest in each other's understanding and needs and opportunities. In Peru, in Chile, in Mozambique, in Bangladesh, Indonesia, in Gaza, and in Europe. Investing in each other to build trust and the opportunity to leapfrog. A safe place where it's not about negotiation, not putting people up against each other or institutions against each other, widening the gap. No, it's about collaboration, bringing people together, organizing a table of understanding, where you can also bring the talent that is needed to drive these innovations, but in a way that there is connection across the board. And that demands a type of leadership that is truly inclusive. I developed a challenge post-Hurricane Sandy, we called Rebuild by Design, that was founded on these principles of inclusion, collaboration, sustainability, and integration. Foundational for that were alliances, collaborations across all partners, all sectors, and all institutions in society. And I get my inspiration for these alliances also in the history, how the Netherlands was founded. The Netherlands is a country made out of water. Every color on this map used to be water. We turned that water into land that is now safe. How? By engineering, you say? No, it started with collaboration. Already in the 12th century, people got together and said, hey, if we want dry feed and access to safe drinking water, the only way we can reach that is by collaborating. The farmer, the businessman, the butcher, the baker, the mayor, the community, the women, men, and children of these communities sat around a table, discussed the matters of safety and quality, and agreed upon interventions that would secure that safety and quality, not only for today, but also for the days to come. And that model of collaboration turned into governance, and that governance turned into our constitution. And that made water part of our constitution, but also a regional water authority, the fourth layer of our democracy. So instead of many countries where there's 3 layers, local, regional, and national, we have a 4th layer totally dedicated to water safety. OECD assessed us. It's part of a bigger institutional framework dating back to the 12th century, establishing of national water authorities, a ministry of water, water in the constitution, of course, disastrous events across ages that helped us respond better and rebuild and recover in light of a better future. Building that capacity into laws, into policy, into finance, but also institutions like our water envoy. It has an impact on water quality and the way we organize ourselves, as well as on water safety, on our coasts, in our rivers, in our cities, and institutional. We have a Delta Commissioner that leads the way on behalf of the government in a collaborative process to protect us with dams, dikes, and levees, to plan in land use, in city and more rural, and to help develop disaster management in light of these dire challenges. But that is not enough. If the Netherlands is safe, we're not safe. We have to work together across our borders with our immediate neighbors, but also across the planet with the partners we value to increase water security. And with that, we drafted an international water ambition. When I started as a water envoy 5.5 years ago, we started to draft this international water ambition that drives that capacity. And in 2019, we renewed that international water ambition to secure that we align it with the SDGs, we align it with our development policies. It helped provoke my agenda in traveling the world, helping and working with communities, with institutions, with governance and businesses on too much water, too little water, and polluted water in the context of conflicts, migration, fragile communities, biodiversity loss, transboundary or within cities, rural environments, and river basins. We drive finance with the OECD, World Water Council, and World Bank Roundtable on Financing Water. We got together a group of countries that face the same challenges when it comes to delta vulnerabilities and opportunities. And I helped launch the high-level panel on water and served as a Sherpa for the UN on water, driving foundational action, building awareness and understanding, valuing water, and driving innovative concept in the context of water disasters challenge as well as the amazing opportunities water brings the world. Based on that, we launched a global commission on adaptation, where water is a critical aspect of, led by Ban Ki-moon. And we are replicating these initiatives, these projects across the world, reinventing the past for that better sustainable future. Post Sandy, I developed Rebuild by Design. I won't go into detail there. I'm not sure if that is.
We have, you have a bit more time, I would say maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay,
if you
then
wish,
I'll
yeah.
round it up with my last initiative, which was very much focused on cities and the resiliency there. We did an assessment coming out of the geography of future water challenges of South and Southeast Asia, where hotspots of vulnerabilities in the context of drought, salination, salt intrusion, sea level rise, subsidence, temperature, pollution, floods from rivers, seas, typhoons, and landslides came together. And there are hotspots of these places that actually combine with the opportunity to withstand these challenges. So there's capacity, enabling environment, institutions, and individuals that are willing to step up in the context of these challenges. So we picked 3 cities, Chennai in India, Kulma in Bangladesh, and Semarang in Indonesia. And instead of a traditional project development approach, where you start with the challenge, research the problem, develop feasibility solution, a project, organize finance, implement, you end up with solutions that are single focused and inadequate. And instead of that, we turned this process around and said, no, it has to be about the people, about R&D and integration. It has to be about this enabling environment, a process of capacitating and bringing finance upfront into this challenge. All stakeholders from the beginning, responsive to the changing environment, scalable and recoverable, not only in these places at risk, but across the region and across the world, and reducing the risk to failure. We set up 6 teams in 3 cities, and I'll explain one, which is Chennai. Chennai in India, a city on the left side of the slide where you see the water balance that is totally falling apart. There's enough water that is falling in by rain, but it's immediately going to the ocean. Polluted because it hits the streets and the already polluted canals. Industry and communities take water out of the aquifer. So that means that the aquifer is diminishing. At the same time, because of saltwater intrusion from the sea, the aquifer becomes more saline. So it's polluted, it's declining, and it's becoming more saline. So that means that the community and industry who need water now have to take it from afar. And that means investing massive amounts of dollars in desalination plants that actually increase the carbon footprint and the cost. The proposed system is closed. If you capture the water, bring it back to the aquifer, invest in nature-based solutions, mitigate risk of too warm, and too dry, and too wet seasons, you can actually build resiliency and sustainability from the community level up, increase the capacity of the aquifer, but also divest from these desalination plants. And that means that the costs are 1/3 less than stupid infrastructure of investment, half on maintenance and operations, but you also cut 80% of your carbon footprint. So water is the enabler for sustainable development. Investing in nature-based solutions, with investing in cultural assets of the city, with these historic tanks, in forestry and renaturalizing the canals, in bioswales in the public sphere and constructed wetlands, as well as making a combination between solid and liquid waste, capturing and recapturing and recycling. Projects were developed across the city that tick not only the SDG 6 box, but all SDGs for resiliency, sanitation, health, biodiversity, capacity, and so forth, and so forth. We start with a pilot with the school, which I won't go into detail now, but we're building it. But that pilot is the start of replicating that initiative across India. And we do it in Semarang and in Khulna too. That is the idea. Starting in these places, scaling it up by replication across the world. Many examples from the Netherlands show that we invest in water quality, in water safety and biodiversity by opening up our infrastructure for fish and habitat, investing in urban environment where we let the water in, protect our dunes, dikes and dune system with infrastructure that actually is opening up public space, building with nature in front of our coast to protect our citizens and our economies behind that, and making sure that if there is a dry season, you have amazing public space, but when there's a wet season, these urban water squares actually capture the water before they go into the system. Is this enough? Yeah, this call to action? Never. We have to continue to step up our ambitions, scale up our initiatives, and replicate our projects. We have to put our money where our hearts and minds are. It's critical and important to continue that. There is no silver bullet. There's no one solution, no salvation, and it is not easy. Not in New York, not in Asia, not in the Middle East, Africa, or Latin America. But as Secretary General Guterres said, we have to step up our efforts now. There is no time to waste. We must change course now. And for that, we need everybody, everyone in every place around the world. I end with this image of these little girls in Semarang. If you read the cap of the youngest, it says future doctor. There were 3 reasons why it says future doctor. 1, she wants to go to school and become a doctor. She wants to learn, so she has ambition. Second, she wants to take care for people, so she cares for her community, for the people around her, her family and friends, but also the unknown, the ones she doesn't know as a doctor. So there's ambition and caring. But third, there is belief. She has hope that it is worthwhile to spend her hours studying, to spend her hours after studying investing in people, because she believes there is a future that it is worthwhile investing in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henk. And I wish you could hear the applause that everyone would normally give you after such a presentation. It's really inspiring to see just, the complexity of the challenges that we have, and to see them really in a connected, integrated way, where sometimes the thinking is a bit too narrow-minded, or within a single discipline, and to see it broken down like this and to reinforce that idea that everything is connected and that everyone has a part to play in the solution, I think is a very powerful message. So thank you very much. We're going to open up the floor now for questions. We have a growing list of people who would like to ask a question. But since I'm the host, I get to go first. So I'll be brief. And also, when you were mentioning the business case for stupid infrastructure, one of the things, as someone who is a proponent of nature-based solutions and who's been trying to raise awareness about them and implement them, one of the frustrations is usually that the business case for nature-based solutions and for nature in general is simply not recognized or acknowledged or as well understood as the business case is for all the other kinds of dumb infrastructures. Any thoughts on how we can improve the business case of nature vis-a-vis let's say, the traditional gray infrastructure?
Yeah, it's actually not so hard, but it's not easily done. Sounds contradictory when I say this, but I'll tell you. Normally, when we look at the business case, We only look at the financial economic impact. And that means that you don't take into account social, cultural, environmental risks and opportunities. And if you do that, you end up with single-focused infrastructure. You go from A to B, or hard infrastructure for protecting economic values. So a singular focus actually prevents from getting to the solutions that are actually sustainable, comprehensive, and inclusive. If you take the SDGs as a scope, so you look at social, environmental, cultural, economic. Economy is not bad, but only financial economic as a focus makes you end up with the wrong solution. But if you look holistically across the SDGs, as we agreed upon, then you find that investing in one way does not help create value across these SDGs. On the contrary, that road actually impacts vulnerable communities, a vulnerable biodiversity, a vulnerable environment, and increases carbon emission because more cars and development, more concrete, and so forth. So if you take into account this comprehensive set of SDGs across the board, critical important. Second, you have to give it a little bit more time in the business case. So the financial economics only pay off on the short term. But if you look at the longer term, this is where you see the negative impacts occur. Because look at, for instance, the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. 10 years later, you all of a sudden saw a drop in fish population. So the negative impact took a while before you saw it. If you don't take that into account, you only show the short-term financial economic gains and not the losses. Other way around, if you take the long term in a comprehensive way, all of a sudden you can capture these revenues. Third, it demands a different governance. And this is best illustrated with if I invest in water, clean drinking water, clean water for all, my health costs go down. But the Department of Health, the Minister of Health, the health community, the health insurance, the health and so forth, that whole health environment is not talking to the water world. Neither is the water world talking. So investing in water actually creates value with your neighbors or the neighbors of your neighbors. So that demands, if you do it more comprehensively, holistically, and longer term, you also have to change the government. These three aspects are critical and important. If you don't do that, you end up with a business model that actually drives business cases that on the short term gain profit, but make us more vulnerable and on the economic terms also create many losses.
Thanks, Henk. And I can imagine that water does have that unifying factor of bringing all these different disciplines and ministries and stakeholders together because it does affect everyone. So it's really nice to hear that. Now it's time for the participants themselves to ask a question. We have a short list here of people who wrote their names in the chat or wrote their questions in the chat. The first person up on the list is Mr. Ala Al-Masoudi from our current Shiraka Iraq training program. So please, Ala, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thanks for the ambassador for a nice presentation. I seen one slide about estimating the losses about due to climate change. So economic losses due to climate change. So could you please brief how they estimate this economic losses and mention for us some reference they follow for estimated economy losses due to climate.
Thank you very much, Ala. I think the question was about estimating economic losses of climate change, how you arrived at that $1 trillion figure, I think.
So there are two, well, there are many reports, but Stefan Hallegatte with the team at the OECD and the World Bank a couple of years ago started to assess, because in cities there's a lot of investment built up. He started to assess vulnerability to in these urban contexts, in the context of economic growth, population growth, and urban growth, in the context of floods, sea level rise, climate impact. And based on investments at risk and the impacts of climate change, he came up with the equation, what is at risk. So also in the Netherlands, if we lose out on our protection, 80% of our economy is at risk because of floods. So this is why we spend 700 billion euros a year to make sure that 700 million euros a year to make sure that we are continue to stay safe. The second study came from the World Bank and the OECD, and that is on a global scale, not only looking what is at risk in coastal cities, but looking at what is at risk because of climate change floods. So that could be rain events, as well as sea level rise, riverine. And that means that there is a vulnerability assessment on current and future situation, as well as an investment assessment on current and future situation in the context of how climate change impact is happening now. And there are then scenarios, pathways on the impact of where it can become worse or less worse, how far in the context of a Paris Agreement are we actually delivering on a promise. So the Hallegatte research was pre-Paris, the World Bank OECD research was post-Paris. They're all online, happy to help you with the links. Mr. Al-Masoudi.
Thank you, Henk. Next question is from Mr. Mazin, also from our current Shiraka Iraq training program.
Hello, Oscar.
Please go ahead. Hello.
Yeah, did you hear me, please?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your valuable presentation. I am Mazin. I am working as a senior engineer in the Iraqi Ministry of Water Resources as a hydrologist. Actually, I have a lot of questions, but I choose the difficult one for you because it's my chance. I subjected to the climate change for 3 times in 3 different perspectives and countries like India, Netherlands, and US. If you please just return back to the slide before the killing the horse slide. If we suppose that the climate change return back or the reverse action, like there is several climate change model says there is no rise in the temperature, or for example, if we taking the Al Gore theory for the climate change and what will, so my question is, what will happen for the $billions spent to the climate change? What will happen for all these plans around the world? Thank you, sir.
You have to, can you, because which slide? Can you explain
the
again?
one before the person was picking himself up off the horse.
Ah, okay, yeah. That was a good reference. This one, yeah, okay.
But I have to ask you to share your screen again, please.
I will, wait. And what was your name, the person who asked?
It was Mazin.
Mazin, okay, Mazin. I'll try to explain. Okay, so I said this, you see, so what you see happening now is that we become more vulnerable with everything we invest. While we set a target that actually was supposed to make us less vulnerable, it's not happening. Climate change is increasing, not decreasing. The pandemic actually makes us more vulnerable. And every day we come up with reactive approaches that only respond to that crisis, or even worse, are not even responsive. But say we have these technical solutions that give us a time of delay. So you build a wall against the flood that happened yesterday, not a wall against the flood of tomorrow. And that actually reduces biodiversity, increases your vulnerability, and you spend a lot of money, so you lose economy. But on the short term, it seems like a fix. Right? So you only delay the impact of the crisis. Then this crazy guy picks himself up, and then it is, how can you not only delay a crisis from happening, but really change course? What is necessary to make that change happen? And second, not only make the change happen, but bring it to scale. And for that, you need interventions that really help us change course, help us bend the trend, that are, in my words, comprehensive, inclusive, and sustainable, that are become catalysts or leverages for the pathway to change. Because we have to find ways forward. And one of the ways I developed that in New York was with Rebuild, now doing it in Asia with Water as Leverage. Bringing all these stakeholders together, looking at all the problems, not only one, but all the problems from society, building solutions that tackle these comprehensively, but also are a foundation for replication and scale, that has the opportunity to help us change course. Because we have to change course in light of the challenges. We have to change course not only because we promised SDGs, but because that is a good idea. I don't like policy because of policy. I like policy only when it is a good idea. And the SDGs as a full set agenda looks like a pretty good idea. But if we want to reach that full agenda, we have to change course.
Thank you, Henk. The next question from Mr. Hashim Karim. So please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we hear you.
Thank you for giving me a chance to ask a question, and I'd like to welcome all our guests from around the world. Actually, my question is about climate change, because in Iraq we have not that much interesting in these issues, so we have many problems related to this subject, such as desertification. Most of our soils have erosion, deterioration, salinity. So we have to ask help from the experience of Netherlands. So can we give us some advices related to the dealing with this problem? I mean, the problem of desertification. Otherwise, we have some smaller project in the Ministry of Higher Education. This is the Million Tree project. It is from the Ministry of Higher Education, and all universities try to plant many types of trees, such as Polania, Moringa, Botswana, many trees around Iraqi cities. So please, can we answer me this question and give me some advice? Thank you.
Thank you. Desertification, there are many projects and examples. It's not easy how you can help start desertification. The problem here is that it has to have a longevity to make sure that it is not an idea. There is a new project for the Sinai, developed with an international consortium, also with Dutch NGO and some Belgian engineers and experts from the Middle East and politicians, that starts from the Mediterranean and actually builds greening of the Sinai up from the part of the Mediterranean. There are other examples from China as well as in Africa. So there are many examples that are a little bit different, each and every one of them, because every condition is different. So focusing on Iraq, Iraq is also a country where the challenges across are very different. Desertification in one part is different than in other parts, really depending on the climate and the changing climate, the soil condition, as well as water conditions in every place, as well as the opportunity for greening that part. So, and I also, but that is challenged by scientists and practitioners. I also think that desertification not always is the solution. Also, I'm also always a little bit afraid that all of a sudden, like desalination was presented as the solution for water scarcity, which only causes more problems, that desertification all of a sudden is the solution to all our problems. No. But it can be part of approaches to build more sustainability, redundancy, and resiliency. But it's not enough. The reason why I'm a little bit careful here too is that you only change the part of where the impact occurs. You don't change the origin. And I think if we don't change as humankind our behavior, the desertification of the world will not bring salvation. We have to change our attitudes, the way we live, the way we invest, the way we develop. If we don't, then desertification will only be a drop on a hot plate. But that said, it is possible. It's part of a full list of approaches that can help mitigate risk, build sustainability and resiliency, and it's really contextual. Many examples to share. Let me see.
And we shared one example in this training course of reforestation in Saudi Arabia. And one of the key principles of this example, which was also done in collaboration with a Dutch company, was the design of letting the system itself regrow the vegetation. So yes, there was some engineering involved and some measures taken, but then the idea was that the humans would step back and allow natural processes to once again take care of the job, let's say.
And that is critical and important. If you don't do this by nature, then it fails. Desertification should be a natural process that can be stimulated and helped by human intervention, but cannot be led by human intervention. The world is not a machine. So this is like your body is not a machine. So just imagine. I mean, okay. Sometimes you can help, but you can't. We are creatures of an amazing complexity, and there is no machine approach to that amazing complexity alone. It is always a mix.
Yeah.
This is also with geoengineering. So we have a lot of so my parents are passed away already quite a long time, but my father was an engineer. My mother was an activist. They were a good match. But my father was an engineer, but he never fell into the trap that. I mean, yes, of course, he said, give me a problem, I will solve it. This is a typical engineering approach. Doesn't matter how big, I will solve. This is engineering. It's like, We want problems. This is, you know, you could almost hear him. But he always taught me that a problem, it doesn't matter how big, you can work on solutions, which is different that you can than solving it. You can work on solutions if only you do it together. And he learned this from my mother. The geoengineering actually presents us that we can avoid changing course. Just because we can spend trillions of dollars in salvation, forget it. It's not true. It doesn't work. There's no magic in that. I'm sorry.
No, indeed, no silver bullet. Okay, we have a few more questions left before we wrap up the session. Housham Jazi from Iran, from one of our Iran courses, would like to ask a question. And so I give him the floor.
Hello. Thank you, Oscar, for your kind support, and thank you, Mr. Henk, for your nice presentation. As I found, you insist on process. And I think that we have to find an approach to run the process. If we accept that the first group that are affecting from climate change are the poverty people, and the people who are their livelihood is based on the natural resources. So we have to think about to improve their resiliences to from the climate change results. So we cannot think to the we cannot run an approach without economic solution. We have to think on livelihood management. We have to think that how we can change the some livelihood manner from based on the climate change, that they cannot live with their normal livelihood if they are living based on, for example, a lake, living based on water, and the scarcity of the water now. They have to suffering and they have to change their livelihood manner. So I want to say that economic, as you said, that business, stupid business, and economic, there is a difference between the microcredit economy and global and a big economy. So we have to think about the microcredit approach for improving the people, local people, to improve their resilience. If I don't know, what's your idea about the poverty people?
No, I said the most vulnerable are hit hardest, not only people, but also environments. You see it now at biodiversity loss. There's a rapid increase in that. We call it the sixth extinction, not for nothing. So we're rapidly on our way to destroying our biodiversity. So yes, the most vulnerable suffer hard, have the hardest time to get back on their feet. So there is a part to work there on, but again, it demands a systems approach, because often most vulnerable live next to the less vulnerable. Again, this is about inequality, but also about a better environment, securing water and energy and food for all, reducing inequalities. So it's not only safeguarding the poor, it's also about mitigating the extremes. Extremes not only in impacts and events of climate, but also extremes in our societies and economies. And I think that is, this is why it's so complex. If there is if you just open the door and say, oh, if we go that way, then everything's going to be fine. No, we have to open many doors at the same time and go many paths. But you are right. We have to make sure that we we mitigate the extremes and inequalities, and a focus on vulnerable places, communities, and assets. It's like with natural resources. Natural resources are vulnerable too. If we value our natural resources better in the context of the SDGs and more comprehensive approaches, we will be better off as humans, not only the rich or the poor, but all. So it has an impact across society. Reducing the extremes, mitigating those impacts is critically important.
Thank you, Henk. We have a couple more questions left. I hope we can manage by 6 p.m. Netherlands time. So the next one is from Hamid, also from Iran, from our training program there. Please go ahead, Hamid.
Thank you very much, Oscar. It's Hamid. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Henk, for your nice presentation. Actually, I wanted to make a comment first because concerning to the combat to desertification in Iran, this kind of the activity started in Iran more than 5 decades ago, and mainly I can say about 6 decades ago. We start with some mechanical activities and also some kind of deforestation. So for many years, we had obtained a very nice result, and we obtained very good impact to control and also to combat, to exactly move and also improve the wind erosion in mainly the desert area and in the arid region. That's right. So, but by passing the time, also the social, economical, and the political situation completely changed. Mainly the local people, during the various decades, during the various periods, faced various problems. So they started also to harvest this kind of the deforested area, for example, to move the wood, to make a coal and another products, for example, for burning and for the cooking. That's right. And other things at also this area faced to various anthropologic problems such as, for example, climate change and, for example, drought in the arid area. So another dimension also appeared, that this kind of the afforested area grows up, and this kind of the, for example, species of the trees that planted many years ago faced various kind of the diseases, fire problem, and a lot of the another things. I can say to you, Henk, that initially our activity started just by the government, without support, without exactly, how can I say, to cooperate the indigenous people in this area, and by these people, in the process of this project. That's right. So now we are facing, for example, by exactly depletion of the groundwater level, also various kind of the drought, poverty between the people, and also illegal harvesting of the wood, for example, for the burning and such various their needs. Now, as you mentioned, you have done, for example, this kind of the combat to desertification in the Iraq, our neighbor here, and how you can solve this problem based on the one participatory approach to absorb the local people, to indigenous people, by using the indigenous knowledge to sustain this kind of the projects in Iraq. Because now one of the main, how can I say, one of the main problem here is to survive and to keep this kind of the project here, and we can take and protect this area without any intervention by the not only the local people, by the people that they are looking for the more profits. Is it clear, my question and my comment, Henk?
Almost, but I think what you try to say is that there, in every situation there are different interests.
The difference, not only difference in interests, but also I can say to you, in situation 5 decades ago were completely different till now. If you want to compare, now we are facing various kind of the stressors. Exactly, I can say natural stressors and also artificial stressors. That it's appeared a vulnerable situation for example, more than 1 million hectare of the afforested area in the desert area in Iran. That is very exactly, I can say it's located in the critical situation. Now we are looking
urgency is bigger.
Yes, you're right.
But the interesting thing is that the complexity did not change because the interdependencies are more. There were always interdependencies between social, cultural, environmental, and economic challenges and opportunities. But because of our increased pressure on our planet, many people, many resources, and so forth, these interdependencies become more vulnerable or more dire, more harder to manage. Second, what you also say is that the interests, and they are, in my words, not your words, but in my words, often vested interests. So interests from the past that are sticky, prevent us from collaborative models that would actually help us to provoke sustainable solutions. And that is true also in the Netherlands. And what you see now in the current COVID recovery, I see 4 challenges, and I'd like to iterate them because I think they highlight a bit also what you say. The first is that, because the COVID crisis is again like a crisis we face so often. And what happens? The first is relief, so which is a band-aid approach. And that relief is a reactive approach to a current crisis. So it's not proactive, it is not looking at the future, it's looking at the current situation. And it costs money, and because you can only spend $1, euro, yen, or whatever currency you have once, it is immediate budget cut in the existing sustainable food, energy, and so forth programs you have. So relief, if that relief was already matched on the ground with the needs in place in a community, you could already make matches between water security and relief and so forth, but it's not happening. Second, because the economy is impacted generally across the world because of this COVID response, you see a second cut in budget. So there is an opportunity there because we are spending trillions of dollars in economic stimulus packages where we can mitigate this economic downturn, public, private, multilateral, and strengthen bouncing back. But it's not easy. So the second challenge is the GDP gap. Third, the reactive COVID-19 relief and recovery is, as said, single focused. Jobs, 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 and not looking across the SDGs perspective. So if we were able to figure out how to convince decision makers, investors, and politicians and private sector to not fall into the short-term trap, but take this longer-term, more comprehensive approach, this is where you can really connect short-term urgent response and recovery to long-term sustainability and climate agenda. So there's a real opportunity. 4, we lack these pipelines. It turns out that what we have on the shelf, what is ready for investment, is often the projects from the past that make us more vulnerable. There are baked invested interests that are, the interventions that are developed based on past policy. So there is real homework. So the pandemic again stressed that we as a world, water community, sustainability community, climate community, politicians, policymakers, investors, and so forth, that want to deliver on the promise, we have homework. We have to make sure that these pipelines of sustainability, green, blue projects and programs are ready ready for investment now. Otherwise, we will make ourselves more vulnerable every day.
Thank you, Henk. I don't know how you are for time. We're over, but the good questions keep flooding in, and I'm going to limit it to 2 more, just because I want to make sure that that people have a chance to speak. Is that okay with you? 2 more questions?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then Zainab is up first. There she is. So please go ahead, Zainab. Oh, we may have lost her.
No,
No.
she's there. I see her. Talk, Zainab. You're unmuted.
You're unmuted, but we can't hear. Okay, that's a shame. She wrote her question in the chat. So I will read it quickly, and I'll ask you for a very brief answer. According to the World Water Development Report of 2020, Water and Climate Change, the hydrological changes will decrease the challenges to achieve the sustainable water management goals, especially the 6th one relating to IWM. So I think the question is, will hydrological challenges decrease the ability to achieve the SDGs?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then
that's one. And the other
also with the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Connection to the pandemic. Yeah. No, it's true that the challenges we face make us more vulnerable. So the opportunity is here. How are we going to strengthen these comprehensive, more integrated, inclusive, sustainable approaches to actually to gain, to leapfrog? And when 2 years ago at the high-level political forum, we presented the review of SDG 6. And we were not on track as a world, but you find these reviews across the SDGs. As I said, we are not on track. So changing course for me is not a funny word. It is a tough, serious business. So I couldn't agree more. Yes, we are on track to become more vulnerable, to not deliver on the promise of Paris nor the SDGs. And for that, current investments are perhaps our best opportunity. If you see the trillions of dollars that are ready to be spent in the context of COVID recovery, if we have the proposals, projects and programs in place for sustainable recovery, we can not only mitigate the risks from this pandemic, we can not only recover from this pandemic from a jobs perspective, we can recover from this pandemic and become more sustainable, more resilient, and help set steps in the context of the SDGs. So really come up with tangible solutions that help policymakers and investors to invest in the recovery in such a way that it's also sustainably and resilient at the same time. It's not easy. We have to convince our decision makers, our government. This is what I do all day. Working around the world with government, with investors, and say, hey, stop. Don't take stupid infrastructure projects from the shelf. Invest in the process to develop pipelines that are sustainable, that really deliver on the SDGs, so we can recover better, real better. So it's not, I'm not saying that it is easy, but it is a necessity. And we have to, everybody has to call on ourselves in the way what we do ourselves, in the way we live, but also on our partners, our leaders, our collaborators, to make sure that divest from the past, invest in the future.
And that's one of the activities that the participants are doing now is identifying selling points that can convince stakeholders that perhaps have a high interest in a situation but low level of influence, to bring them into that process according to what their needs and priorities are, to get this process, participatory and
So
underway.
if you look at the Green Deal in Europe as an opportunity, the interesting part is now is that the Netherlands said the COVID recovery should be in line with the Green Deal. So then you start to build one ambition on top of the other in line of that better future. So that is helpful. If we say investing in the recovery has to be done sustainably and climate proof, then all of a sudden the job you create tomorrow is still there the day after. But if you only bring back the jobs of yesterday, then they will be gone tomorrow, because that economy is the economy of the past is not the economy of the future. The society of the past is not the society of the future. We have to invest in the future. And now in COVID recovery, many dollars are ready to be spent. So spend them on the future, not on the past.
Agreed. Our last question is from Rasha. Sorry to all of those who also have questions, but time ran out. Rasha, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you. Because in my country, always ladies last. So, okay, thank you. I want to ask about the reports by design. When I read this terms, I research in the internet, and I read that something you say is about understanding the opportunity that you could do things differently. So my question about, in my country, there is many years of dropping water tables, contamination, and encroaching urbanization have put the area's ecological stability at risk. Of course, if we have faith, we could take the responsibility to engage with other across government, across business, across communities. My question about what's your vision about the first step to rebuild by design about the better community? What's the first step about this?
Okay, Rasha, I hope I understand you right. When I started Rebuild by Design, it was like now, there was a crisis. Many people lost their lives, brothers, sisters, daughters, family, lost their jobs, their homes, their businesses. So there was a crisis. The impact of Hurricane Sandy was a loss of $65 billion. So there was a real financial economic impact, but people also died. So there was also on a human and humanitarian scale an impact. Again, also a recovery, an effort to rebuild. That is then an opportunity, because there is a real, the need is very clear. You see the impact of the disaster in front of you. Perhaps, I'm not sure. So, and, can you see this?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. So this is what the road looked like, and the house. It is only part. So, and this actually showed. So the blue. So this is Manhattan. This is New York. This you see Central Park in yellow. The blue is the water with Hurricane Sandy. So it came all over. But the orange is vulnerable communities. So the darker, the poorer. So where it's purple, water hits vulnerable communities. I was here, for instance, visiting. And this is also where they stored chemical stuff. So people were living here in vulnerable communities in the industrial side. And the water that was 6 meters high, that flooded the whole area, was polluted. So the Environmental Protection Agency had to close the playgrounds, the public sphere, because one of the neighbors said the soil lit up at night. So contaminated was that water. And you see that the power supply, 75% of the power supply was in the floodplain, and 80% of the fuel was also. So in that sense, and what you see here is that a disaster like this shows your vulnerability. It is a living proof of how vulnerable infrastructure is, how vulnerable communities are, how vulnerable energy and fuel are. Also this is Manhattan, so it's dark. Why? Because one power plant went out. Not because 6 power plants went out, 1. So people who lived 50 floors up could not go down. Refrigerators, food, everything got destroyed. And then the governance system in the New York region is a mess. So I teach at Harvard. With my students, we did a governance assessment, and it's like total fragmentation across the board. And then the institutions in place fail. So there was 60 billion to the rescue, but how to spend it, knowing that there was a real local need. The people that lost everything had total distrust in government, in society, in everything. So there is a momentum, as you rightly say, but building on this momentum is not easy. And this is how I created, this is where I helped create Rebuild by Design. So you have to do this very carefully, and I will, this is a bit the process. So what we said is that we asked the world for help, and we got 148 teams that said, we want to partner with you. We selected 10 of these teams with local, regional, and international partners, and they worked with foundations, universities, NGOs, 535 community organizations in 148 neighborhoods across 181 government agencies. So this is what we did. This is what we try to do, is engage, engage, engage. And first, research, understanding first before jumping to conclusions. Then building partnerships and coalitions. So we had teams working on the ground with almost everybody, understanding, partnerships, and only then could we help develop solutions. Only then we brought solutions to the table. Only then we had these 10 teams across the region that in the end came up with solutions for the swamp and biodiversity, for nature and building with nature along the coast, with infrastructure that was innovative across Manhattan, with plans and programs for urban environments that really suffered in the context of Hurricane Sandy, living shorelines that helped resist surges, building off the coast with nature-based solutions, creating better biodiversity, ecological diversity, as well as ecological resiliency. And then we allocated funding for implementation, scaled up the competition. So what also happened, to your question, where are you?
She's here, but we don't have the video.
No. Well, okay.
But she's here.
Yeah. So the other thing that happened, there you are. Hi, Russia. The other thing was, and that is to your point, how you bring people together, commitment. What do you think? I worked for the federal government.
I think you are Iron Man, and in my country we want man like you.
So to your, thank you, but to your point on how to bring people together, it is also, you have to be a little bit, you have to be stubborn, but perhaps also a little bit real stubborn. Because when I worked for the federal government, coming from the Netherlands, people totally did not trust me. So I came to communities and they said, who are you? And I said, oh, I come from the Netherlands. And they say, go away. I said, no, I don't want to go away. I want to help. They say, you can't help. I just lost my daughter. I lost my business. I lost my home. How can you help? What is it that you can help that others can't? So we came back and came back and came back and started to build trust. We listened and listened and listened and listened and listened. Day after day after day after day. Only then were we able to create a conversation between experts, that were able to build awareness among communities that, okay, they are at risk, but they also could invest in a better future. That took weeks, that took months. Only after 9 months did these vulnerable communities come back to us and say, okay, we are ready. We want to sit at the same table. We want to work with you. There is a saying in the Netherlands that says, trust, building trust comes by turtle, so really slow, but leaves by horse. And I think this is true. And that is what I want to stress too. Consistency, continuity, commitment, ambition are critical importance. You can't, this is not a one-off. You can't say, oh,
the human.
Then I'll go somewhere else.
Always first is a human.
Yeah. So thanks for your question, Russia.
Thank you very much.
Really
Thank you.
So Henk, we've taken up so much of your time, but really I think it's such a treat personally, and I think everyone agrees that to discuss these issues with such a diverse group of people facing similar but different challenges. I want to thank you on behalf of the Hague Academy for Local Governance. Thank you on behalf of all the participants who I've muted, but who I will now unmute. And I look forward to, one day seeing you present again in person.
I look forward to come to the region. I wish when we see opportunities to engage behind computer screens, I always find it very hard. I wish I could visit you in Iran and Iraq, in the MENA region, to work with you and see how we can build a better future together. So thank you very much for joining. Wish you good luck in your work, but also safety and good health for you and your families and friends. Take care of yourself. It's very important, so you can also take care of your neighbors, your family and friends. Stay safe. And thanks, Oscar, for hosting and moderating. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you, Henk.
Thank you, Mr. Oscar.
I've unleashed the microphone, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Henk. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All the best for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will
Thank
close
you.
the meeting now. So, but thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Thanks again, Henk. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye, everyone.